If you clicked on this video, make sure you watch until the end. I promise you will learn something. So I'm waiting for the market to open, and I pulled up the copper futures chart. And that's what we're going to learn about today. Now, copper is often overshadowed by the other metals like gold and silver. But copper has a really important relationship with the economy. And that's what a lot of this video we're going to talk about. When you think about what copper is used in, houses, electricity, manufacturing. So, every house, every apartment has tons of copper in it in a large part for electricity. Manufacturing, anything that's being made, think about the cars, all the components in different devices. Copper is really in almost everything that we touch. And so when you think about that in terms of an economy that's running well, an economy that is doing lots of manufacturing, then that demand for copper would go up if they're doing lots of that. So think about if you are in any of these industries. Let's just say you're in construction and you make houses. Let's say you're planning for more production in a year from now, and you're scheduling that out, and you say, we're going to need these materials, we're going to need copper. Well, you're not going to buy the copper today. You want to buy it, in a year from now when you're actually setting it up. But you don't want those prices of copper to be too high in the future. So what do? You go and you buy the copper futures contract, so that in case you see a rise in price like this, then you're not going to get hurt by that rise in price, because your hedge by buying the futures contract will offset that increase in the price. Or let's say you're making some component that is widely used, and you're going to need lots of it. Once again, instead of just buying it and hoping the price is appropriate a year from now, let's say it's April, and you say, I want to avoid a large price increase like this to keep my costs lower. So you would buy the futures contract in April, and then when August comes around and it's time to actually start buying that copper, well, you've made a lot of money on your hedge here. You're able to offset the higher prices you'll pay for the copper by making the money from the copper trade. Or you might actually just take delivery directly from the futures contract, depending on how they have that set up. So when we think about that, when we see a spike in copper prices like we have here, and this is the daily chart. So we have this big spike here that actually went up more than 10% and almost 20% in one day. So that's actually a pretty big spike. So when we see that, what is one way that we might interpret that? Well, companies are planning to use more copper in the future, so they're buying those futures contracts now to offset those higher costs in the future. So what this implies for the economy is that the economy would be doing better. There is better predictions for more manufacturing to take place in the future. And on the other side of that, look at this. This is during the tariffs, and copper went down a full point. And people were thinking the economy was going to go into a recession or collapse or have real issues with those tariffs. So they were predicting there to be less manufacturing, less new construction, and so the futures prices dropped. People were selling the futures contracts, betting that there would be less copper used in the future because of those tariffs and because of a slowing economy. So this really paints a picture for you, what copper's role is in the economy, and in a way how copper could be considered a leading indicator of things like the economy. So you have companies directly coming and buying futures contracts to hedge their own projects in the future. Then you also have big funds, hedge funds and traders, that if they feel like they have any information on what the economy is going to be doing in a year from now, then they might also come and trade the futures. So if you have, anyone with more knowledge than what the market has, then they will buy or sell, and then that will adjust the market. So if you have lots of hedge funds or lots of companies both thinking the economy is going to do better, and there's going to be more starts for manufacturing, housing, then they would be going and buying the copper futures. So you have multiple participants that might come to the same conclusion and either push the market up or down. So in this way, we could look at it as a leading indicator. So this is the weekly chart now. Each bar is a week. And we can see here's the tariff lows. Here's our current price. If I zoom out, go out many weeks back to the COVID lows down here, we can see that we're actually at the highest prices for copper that we've been at least since COVID. So here's the COVID lows. Copper got down to 2.5, and currently we're at 5.8. So we're the highest we've been since even before COVID. You could argue that there's some inflation that's built into this. So the relationship isn't truly 5.8 compared to 2.5. But even with the inflation, it's the difference isn't that great. So at a minimum, we're seeing fairly high prices in copper. And if we're going to interpret that as a leading indicator of more manufacturing and more housing starts in the future, then that would be good for the economy. Right? And if we want to interpret it that way, then this would mean that this is the most bullish that the market has been on the economy. At least for the last few years. So at least since a little bit before COVID, this is the most bullish that copper has been on the economy. Now, of course, I'm only talking about the demand side of copper. I haven't been talking about the supply side, which would be, well, if fewer people are producing copper, then we would see prices go up. And right, that could be a variable. Tariffs on copper itself could be a variable. So both of those things should be considered, but I don't think we should ignore the companies coming to buy the futures contracts and pushing the prices up because they are expecting to do more business in the future. So here's an order. I placed this on a simulated account just to show you an example. Copper, the price actually moves quite a bit. So one tick is 0.0005, and that tick is $12.50. So it doesn't sound like much, but you can see this has just been a single 5-minute bar, and the price has already changed by $400. So you see some of these other 5-minute bars were even larger than this. So some of these are $1,000 moves in just 5 minutes. The copper futures contract is actually quite large. In fact, you're trading 25,000 pounds of copper if you're trading the futures contract. So that's why the value in your account would change so much, because your leverage is so large, 25,000 pounds of copper. So in theory, if you held the futures contract until the end of the contract, then you would have to either receive that 25,000 pounds of copper or send it to someone else. So this contract, it's rather large, but there are micro copper contracts. So you could trade 1/10 the size. So you could do $1.25 a tick. And so that's probably a more reasonable size for most people. There's an ETF as well. So if you just wanted to just trade an ETF, not do the futures, then it's CPER. And I looked at it, it tracks pretty closely to the futures contract. So either way, if you want to trade it or get information on what copper is doing, then the futures or the ETF are good ways to do that. So there has been a lot of selling on the copper this morning. So one way to interpret that would be that the companies are planning less future manufacturing. So they would be reducing some of their long futures contracts. Although also there might be some tariff news on copper, or there just might be supply issues somewhere. But I hope that was insightful to you guys. I know copper is not really talked about very much. So I'm glad to help you guys out. Every little thing you can add to your tool belt will help you out. And the principles that I teach on this channel, they can help you for a lifetime. So thank you guys for watching. If you have questions or comments, leave them down in the comments. And if you like the video, go ahead and like it and subscribe to the channel. So I'll see you guys next time.